very glad that you have come and you showed interest to our event. My name is Andrea Értető. I'm a research director here at the Institute of World Economics. And our institute organizes this book presentation together with TEPSA. For those who don't know, TEPSA is the abbreviation of the Trans-European Policy Studies Association, which was established 47 years ago. And it has almost the same number of member and associated member institutes because it has now 46 members. And from Hungary, our institute participates in this TEPSA network. The main office of TEPSA is in Brussels, and this association is involved in different European projects, organizes trainings, and promotes research. And not long ago, TEPSA decided to launch a book series with the title The Future of Europe, Views from the Capitals. 2 books were published, and the third is the one we present now. These books consist of short chapters analyzing selected European issues from the perspective of the EU member states and neighboring countries. The topic of this book, the newest book that will be published at Springer within some weeks, is solidarity. So the exact title of the book is European Solidarity in Action and the Future of Europe. The TEPSA member institutes have been organizing such a book presentation events, and it's our turn now. So we present the Czech and Hungarian chapters. We invited this time Czechia. Last year, the topic was populism, and we invited Slovenia. So I'm very glad that we have our guests from Czechia, Mr. Zdeněk Sikra, who is an assistant professor at the University of West Bohemia, Department of Politics and International Relations. And he and Professor Petr Kratochvíl from the Institute of International Relations, Prague, are the authors of the Czech chapter. The Hungarian part was written by Professor András Sinotai, Norbert Szijjártó, and by myself. András Sinotai is an emeritus professor, our former director, member of the Academic Council of the College of Europe and the Scientific Board of the Bertelsmann Foundation. And Norbert Szijjártó is a junior fellow at our institute. His research interests include European integration and monetary union, Euro introduction. And we have a special guest also from Hungary, András Bíró Nagy, who is a senior research fellow at the Institute for Political Science. And he is also a director and co-founder of the Policy Solutions Institute. András worked at the European Commission as a political advisor to the Hungarian EU Commissioner for Employment and Social Affairs at that time. And he has many interesting research concerning Central Europe and the Visegrad regions. So some words about the rules. We will hear the 4 presentations, and afterwards you will have a possibility to ask or put comments. You can use the chat or you can raise your hand. And afterwards, so this will after the 4 presentation. So I give the word now to our Czech guest to describe us the Czech situation concerning the solidarity. So please, Mr. Sikra.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much, and hello from the Czech Republic. I'm really glad to join this interesting session. In the very beginning, I want to thank TEPSA and especially Andrea from the Hungarian team for this opportunity. I'm sorry I won't have any PowerPoint presentation, but my speech shouldn't be so long. At least I hope so. So I will try to be brief. I want to focus on the European solidarity from the perspective of the Czech Republic, to focus on the Czech perception of this issue. And I would like to explain a predominantly negative notion of this term in Czechia in relation to the European Union and answer the question in the title of my contribution. At the beginning of our chapter about Czechia and European solidarity, me and my co-author Petr Kratochvíl, we wrote that this term has an entirely original meaning in the Czech political discourse. What does it mean? It has become to be seen as a part of the moralizing rhetoric of old member states in the European Union. And also, it has become to be seen as a means to push European integration further, which is not so popular in the Czech society, in the Czech Republic, because I think, do you know that many Czechs are quite of Eurosceptic. So it explained the stance, the attitude of many Czechs to European integration. And also the solidarity, it has become to be seen not just as a tool how to push European integration further, but the really obstacle for some issues in Czech European politics. During the European migration crisis, which is the key even for understanding of the Czech position, it has become a negative symbol representing Brussels' political will. The relocation of refugees was not seen primarily as a moral responsibility, but as a political decision of European elites, demanding that countries should respect European values and accept refugees violates two key principles of the Czech return to Europe. First one is a sovereign nationhood, and the second, to decide own fate. In fact, of course, both principles are common to all Central and Eastern Europe countries, not just for the Czech Republic, but also for before countries like Poland, Hungary, Slovakia. This critical view was capitalized not only by Czech Eurosceptic, but also broadly across the whole political spectrum. Solidarity has therefore been transformed into another kind of participation, which is such help that we choose ourselves. This reinterpretation became officially known as flexible solidarity. Also, the term voluntary solidarity has been used and turned into a political mantra for the entire Visegrad group. So, in the Czech interpretation, European solidarity is a threat to national needs and national sovereignty. This understanding of solidarity is connected with or to most European policy issues. Let me mention some recent examples from the COVID period. During the pandemics, the role of the EU was belittled, and the EU was accused by the Czech president and the prime minister of being entirely incapable of effective action. As the COVID crisis hit in its second wave last year, the EU solidarity was entirely sidelined, like the coordinated approach, which may increase the accessibility of the vaccine. The EU financial funds used during the pandemics were publicly labeled as our money, in spite of the country's position as a net recipient. Also, in regard to the post-COVID recovery program known as EU Next Generation, for example, the Czech Prime Minister Babiš stressed that, quotation, solidarity has its limits, and criticizing the European Union's willingness to become what is referred to as a debt union or transfer union. Solidarity thus serves a specific function in the Czech Republic, both before and after the pandemics. The term is seldom used, and solidarity only became the fallback option in those situations when the country itself needs it, which is rather rare, or when the country's leadership is indifferent towards a matter. So let me summarize the main points which could have explained the Czech attitude to the solidarity in the European Union. At the same time, it is also the answer to the main question: why are the Czech afraid of solidarity in the European Union? The first point, the first reason is so-called Czech exceptionalism. I'm speaking about the persistent Czech narrative. We are best in COVID, we are best in fiscal policy, we are best in many other things. We are better than many Western European countries. It is the prevailing feeling that Czechs do not need help from others, and therefore others should not expect the opposite. Yes, it is a rather selfish approach, but it is often a part of the Czech self-definition inside the European Union, as I mentioned before. The second point, second reason, solidarity has negative connotation in topics that are most important, or that there are in general important or sensitive for the Czech position in the European Union, like the solidarity within the Eurozone. It is a question of creating that union, like the solidarity with refugees, like the system, creating the system of their relocation within the EU, like the solidarity as a consequence of COVID pandemics, like the Czech initial refusal to help more affected countries in Southern Europe, the Czech skepticism about the efficiency of the European Union's assistance. The third point, the third reason, Czech politics has a problem to define clearly what is the common benefit of the European Union as a whole. The non-existent debate on the Czech vision of European integration illustrates this issue very well. The fundamental problem is to explain not only what is not working and what is not representing Czech interest, but above all, what is a common good of the Union as a whole. And here, of course, the question of solidarity is the important key concept of the think about the European Union. What are advantages of the European integration? The fourth point, the fourth aspect is the fact that due to the legacy of communism, solidarity is often perceived by many Czechs negatively as a left-wing concept. In this sense, solidarity helps someone not because he really deserves it. He gets something for free, and that is, in the eyes of many Czechs, not fair. This is really important for understanding the Czech position. And the fifth point, last but not least, the Czech politics reflects European trends, of course. I'm speaking about the renationalization of politics and the rise of populism, which the concept of European solidarity does not fit into. So it is not a matter of promoting what is good, because solidarity means sharing, not sharing only disadvantages, but sharing common problems. But what is nationally popular, or rather expedient? So at the end, I would like to add a final remark about the Czech attitude to the concept of solidarity. This specific Czech solidarity discourse, this dominant narrative I mentioned, is spread from the top down, from the political sphere to the public. Therefore, the question is whether it cannot change in the future, whether it cannot change after the Czech parliamentary election in October this year. A new direction in Czech politics could turn European solidarity into a different and, I think, more positive value. So thank you for your attention, and I am looking forward to a common discussion.
Thank you very much, Zdeněk. It was quite surprising how many common features we have, apparently not only with Poland, but with Czechia too. So now let's turn to Hungary. And for our foreign guests, I brought a picture. I will show it. So if you walk on the streets of Hungary, you can meet these giant public posters asking you as an average citizen whether you feel angry at the nice Belgian city. These posters we have for 2 months now on the streets, but there is a more recent event, because just 1 week ago, the official legal bulletin of the Hungarian government was published. And in this bulletin, there was only one decree or resolution of the government, which is only some sentences, some paragraphs, saying this text that Brussels is attacking Poland in the back, abuses its power, endangers the unity of the EU, and anyway interferes into Polish legislation and violates member states' sovereignty. Of course, this decree doesn't explain why the Commission acts in this brutal way, but it is only a statement that Hungary stands by Poland. So this is a kind of solidarity, we could say, but it's a solidarity with those who break the rules of the club and not with the club itself. So I now will give the word to Professor András Sinotai, who will continue speaking about Hungary and tell us some more aspects of the solidarity. András, you are muted.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much for the kind invitation and honoring invitation. I am really very glad to be able to present the short paper written by 3 of us, Andrea Eltető, Norbert Szijjártó, both of them are here, and myself. And I would like to thank particularly TEPSA for this excellent initiative and our work together in order to publish the book and to be able to present it today in an international forum. I would like to make altogether 7 comments, hopefully within the 20 minutes limit. First is once TEPSA opted for this topic, we were absolutely not aware of how important in a very short time this topic will become due to new challenges. I do not mean just the pandemic and the national or EU level responses to pandemic, and we are absolutely not at the end of the day. But also the new climate and environmental challenges, security issues, a new wave, potential new wave of migration, and how to create a global Europe, what about the future of transatlantic relations, China, etc. All this would need a common position and common policies on the side of the European Union if we really want to stabilize and make more important the European integration. And these common policies which are needed, they have to be backed, they have to be supported by more consensus and a higher level of solidarity. So I think today we have an updated and higher quality version of solidarity, which we have to talk about if we look at the future of the European Union and also of the member countries. My second remark is about the interpretation of solidarity. I personally consider solidarity as an enlightened self-interest of each country. Solidarity is always a two-way street. It is a win, it has to be a win-win scenario, not necessarily a balanced one. Some countries may win more at a given moment, some others win less, but all of them are winners. And this balance is also changing over time, and let alone the different topics which are involved into this solidarity picture or solidarity package. It is by far not only about money. It is about the common shaping of a common future for the European Union. So several areas are included. The second remark here still concerning solidarity, that there is, I cannot make a difference between internal and external solidarity. So if the political leadership is based, or the ideology and the everyday behavior of the political leadership is based on attacking the other, always being for victory and not compromises, exclusion or inclusion, hatred versus cooperation, closing down the council versus opening up. This attitude you will feel not only in the external behavior or external reaction of the country's leadership, but also in the internal field. I will come back to the intertwining of internal and external solidarity or lack of solidarity in some of the next paragraphs. My third remark is that, and it is already concerning Hungary, Hungary is not the only country in the European Union where the reality on the government level concerning the future of Europe and handling European issues on the one hand, and the sentiment, feeling, emotions, and I would say even the knowledge of the society are very different. There is a wide gap. On the government level, you can find in some countries are friendly to the European Union and would like to support deepening and the future of Europe. Some others are Eurosceptic, but here is, we have to go further concerning the differentiation. We have also some countries, and I mean, you will find Hungary certainly in this list, which are not only Eurosceptic, the government, I would tell you, the government, but also in many cases anti-EU, and even I go further, sometimes openly undermining the unity and the current architecture of the European Union. Whether they are doing it because of short-sighted self-interest, or whether they are also supported by some external forces who are not interested in a stronger European Union is another question. I would like to go into details. On the other hand, on the society level, the Hungarian society, according to all the Eurobarometer and other surveys, belongs to the most pro-EU societies. About 80% of the society looks at the European Union as the future of the only future for Hungary. It is not only because of money. It is also because of democracy, because values, because of international cooperation. They see the European Union as a small country, as Hungary. Most citizens see membership in the European Union as an upgrading of the interest or the interest implementation of small countries. Outside the European Union, this interest implementation would be zero, practically. One more remark here is that not only for Hungary, but particularly for Hungary, what we have found is that the citizens' confidence, trust in the institutions of the European Union is higher, much higher than the trust in the national authorities or national administration. My fourth remark is about the different areas of solidarity. Here I would like to make two comments. The first on so-called external solidarity, how the Hungarian government behaved concerning European Union policies. We know very well what has happened during the migration and after the migration. Hungary is absolutely 100% against any kind of migration, any kind of redistribution or allocation of refugees, etc., etc. The other issue is that, which has not been given sufficient attention to, that the European Union had been shaping different external policies concerning third partners or parties, third countries, and prepared several statements concerning the situation in Belarus, Russia, China, Hong Kong, the African, Caribbean, and Pacific community. And in all cases, Hungary was the only country which vetoed, which made use of its veto right. It really raises the question for the future of the Europe, to what extent qualified majority voting has to be introduced in order to that all countries would be prevented from making use of the veto right, or if they are doing that, then they will not be participating in the future cooperation framework. This is, I can quote a number of concrete examples. I would like to refrain from it. The other issue concerning external relations is the special way the Hungarian government practiced or had been practicing in the past years with some third countries outside the European Union, meaning Russia, meaning China, meaning the third community, the third countries, with a third center established in Hungary, the International Investment Bank, clearly dominated by Moscow, also in Budapest, with diplomatic immunity given to all the members, etc. So this is certainly not in line with EU policies. All these individual steps could have been embedded into an EU framework, and then within this framework, the national interest could have been implemented. But the way it was done was practically anti-EU and definitely undermining the unity, or not so, the unity of the European integration. Now, concerning and then one more issue, Western Balkans. Hungary, the Hungarian leadership, better to say, used to be the basic supporter of the immediate membership of Serbia and maybe of some other Western Balkan countries in the European Union. And as far as the Hungarian Hungarian image in the European, it looks like, I would recommend all Western Balkan countries, if they want to have a clear and smoother way of enlargement somewhere in the future, they should refrain from any Hungarian support. Sorry for being so strong, but Hungarian support for these countries is not increasing the opportunity or the chance of these countries to become a member. Just the opposite. It would create a lot of resistance, additional resistance, even in those countries which otherwise would be neutral or would have some resistance, but this resistance would have been broken with much better alliances within the European Union. Now, concerning the internal issues of undermining the European Union, Andrea Éltető has shown one poster. I would say that there were several others in the past. Brussels was generally blamed for a long time now for interfering in domestic issues. Brussels bureaucracy, which is of course impotent and should give much more room for national decision making, etc. Then Brussels was always then compared to Moscow. That is the same. And concerning this poster, Andrea shown, are you angry or are you angry with the Europe, with Brussels? I must tell you, I told a couple of weeks ago in an interview, yes, I am angry. I have been angry, but not because of the government thinks it, but because Brussels did not make in the last 10 years the necessary steps in order to stop the destruction, the deliberate destruction of democratic principles, democracy and basic values of the European Union and also of Hungary. This is why I was furious, and concerning Brussels, let's hope the new and very strict position of the European Union concerning the recovery fund will change this situation. Also, the Hungarian press was full of praising the United Kingdom of leaving the European Union, that there is life outside the European Union. And some others told from the very beginning, we are only interested in the European Union as long as we are not beneficiaries of money. And this is a very simplistic and extremely cynical way of looking at the European integration as a key framework for Hungary's present and situation and future development. And last but not least, we have to deal also with sorry? We have to do with the idea of Huxit, that Hungary should leave the European Union. It was written by somebody, not necessarily from his own endeavor, but because demanded by the government, and particularly by the Prime Minister himself, just to monitor what would be the opinion, what would be the general reaction to such an idea, which of course is absolutely not realistic. Then in the last 2 weeks, we have seen this issue of Huxit. Then the Prime Minister came out with a very interesting remark that even if the European Union is collapsing, we will be the last ones who will hold the last elements of the house, so we will not leave the European Union collapse. That is, and then 5 days later, the Polish president came to Hungary. Andrea has shown the Hungarian letter, which was again a very clear anti-EU declaration. So this kind of, I'm sorry for the word, shameless cynicism, I cannot find any other characteristic for it. This is the main feature of the current government's EU-related politics. This is the 4th point. Very shortly, the point 5, COVID. Hungary went again an individual way when the country or the government blamed the European Union for being too slow with the vaccines and therefore threatening the life of Hungarian citizens. Then the country, we have acquired a lot of other vaccines, mainly from China, also from Russia. But these vaccines cost 3 times more than the Pfizer on the one hand, and they are absolutely not as effective. So, it created a new diversion or differentiation in Europe that instead of being solidarian with the others, those European member countries, EU member countries, which did not accept Sinopharm and did not accept Sputnik, they do not allow Hungarian citizens to enter their territory. Only when Hungarians have another vaccine as well, or have a European vaccination document, or have a PCR test. All this is, of course, extremely increasing the costs of families and also of professionals who wanted to go to very different EU member countries. Now, but this is not only the external side of solidarity. The fact that 100,000 of Hungarians got the Chinese vaccine, with a very low level of efficiency, particularly if they are more than 60 years old. In brackets, even in China, people higher than 60 years have not been vaccinated with this with the Sinopharm because there was not enough proof of its effectiveness. Now, in this case, practically the Hungarian government did not only go against solidarity in the European Union, but attacked practically solidarity within Hungary as well by exposing a large part of the Hungarian population to additional harm or additional uncertainty. Now, now we have the 4th wave of the COVID, and what is again very cynical. On the one hand, the emergency situation had been just prolonged just yesterday, and at the same time, no other measures are necessary to be taken. In just the opposite, we had soccer matches with 60 or 70,000 people from all around the world without any proof of vaccination. We had last week the Eucharistic World Congress without any vaccination proof. And now we have opened the World exhibition, hunting exhibition, once again without any measure. It means that those who are coming to Hungary, it is not only the Hungarian society, those who are coming to Hungary without vaccination or will be infected here in Hungary and go back. It raises the issue not only of internal solidarity, but of international solidarity, not only in the European Union, but with all those countries from where we have had or will be having visitors without any proof of vaccination or any preventive measure. I will not go to the point 6 because it is the financial issue. Norbert Szijjártó will be addressing this issue more in detail. If it is necessary, I would be more than ready to come back to this issue in the question and answer period. My last remark is the historical experience and the message of Franciscus, the Pope who visited Hungary, but his main message to Hungary was not expressed in Hungary, but in Slovakia. When the Hungarian Prime Minister asked the Pope that he should help to support Hungary in keeping and defending Christianity, his answer was, Christianity, first of all, is an open issue. You have to open up the country and not close down. Then you are a real Christian if you are inclusive and not exclusive. If you are cooperating and not based on hatred. Keep peace open the country. And this is for 1,000 years of Hungarian history. It is the main historical lesson for us. Without an open Hungary, we would not have been able to survive the stormy centuries behind us. And here the last remark is that the European Union faces a number of external and internal challenges. I do hope that we will find the right answers at the right time, but it is not enough for the implementation and for the sustainability of even of the best policies. But we definitely need, and that is an all-European requirement, is that we have to build or rebuild in a cross-country, in the framework of a cross-country initiative, the European Identity Project. Regional and national and European identity are not mutually excluding themselves. They are mutually supporting each other. And this European identity is definitely necessary for having the adequate and critical social support to the future decisions and the implementation of decisions on the European level. And the European identity can create a higher or even a new quality of solidarity in Europe. Solidarity and identity are intertwined, and they are needed to create a stronger, a more resilient European Union, a European Union which is a constructive global player and a reliable partner for everybody, both within the EU and outside of the EU, for everybody in the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, András. And as you mentioned, now Norbert Szijjártó will speak more about the COVID and the financial issues of Hungary.
Just a very short question. Do you see my slides?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Thank you very much. So my task here is to talk about financial solidarity. And as Professor Inotai mentioned, I'm having a very technical presentation today. Just the fact that I take into consideration the measures initiated by the government to tackle the COVID-19 crisis. First of all, on the left, we can see the first phase of the action plan. It was started in early March last year. That was the first package introduced by the government. It contains several different measures, a wide range of measures, but those measures did not impact seriously the expenditure side of the budgetary balance or the budget of Hungary. So from credit repayment moratorium for private persons and legal entities, and the prohibition of termination of credit, and tax reliefs for different kind of entrepreneurs, small entrepreneurs, modified social security rules were introduced in different sectors vulnerable to the COVID-19 crisis, including tourism and, for example, gambling and other kind of sectors. After a few weeks later, in the April of 2020, Hungary introduced the first large package of COVID-19 response measures under the name of Economic Protection Action Plan. The first package was later included in this one. That's why this Economic Protection Action Plan starts with the second phase. This was the phase when Hungary introduced the first, let's say, program to help employees and employers under a Kurzarbeit type wage subsidy. This subsidy technically could have reached the 70% of the net wage. By the way, there was a ceiling or a threshold for this, and the largest amount of benefit was approximately about 350 euros. And to aggravate this, the impact of this measure was that the government created an overly complex application system that deterred companies from engaging in this scheme. The government started supporting investment and started providing loans. These are the major phenomenon of the COVID measures of Hungary. On the one hand, supporting investment, and on the other hand, providing loans. Certainly, in the second phase of the action plan, some sectors again benefited from the support of the government. Tourism, health, food, agriculture, and a huge number of sectors impacted heavily by the COVID-19 crisis were in the list. And technically, finally, what I would like to mention here under the second phase of the action plan, under the label of protection of families and pensioner, the government restored the source month's pension, technically the first week of the first month pension. And healthcare measures or financial measures related to the healthcare system. The government provided one-time salary supplement for healthcare workers, and obviously purchased a wide range of medical equipment from masks to defibrillators and other kind of equipment, and wage rise for nurses. And the first package, or at the end of the second phase, the sum of the action plan was more than 900 billion Hungarian forints. How this action plan continued, and this is the first phase. On the left, we can see that the government always mentioned 9 trillion Hungarian foreign measures. Technically, this is equal 18-20% of the Hungarian GDP. By the way, those measures was the reconfiguration of budget instead of individual and new measures. This was dominated by loans and involvement of pre-existing plans and financial supports from the European Union. Technically, EU funds were included in those measures, and these measures be implemented between 2020 and 2022. So the measures: protection of jobs, creation of new jobs, investments, again protecting domestic ownership of different types of enterprises, factories in certain sectors, and the protection of families, again, and pensioners. And during the year, a very good article from the journal HVG, they calculated on the official communication how much was spent on the protection of the economy. Technically, the whole amount of support or subsidies was equal with 3.6 trillion Hungarian forints, but in reality, 1/4 of this amount was only spent on protection, and the larger part of these measures were ordinary budgetary expenditures, including supporting of state-owned companies, road projects, renovation of roads, or building new roads, aid to raise competitiveness. For example, a very unique measure to tackle the crisis, the building of a national athletics center in Budapest, cross-border economic development programs, again, a very unique version, the Budapest-Belgrade railway lane, and so on. And the first item, or the first year when healthcare measures for a wage rise for doctors, that was mounted for 300 billion forints. On the right, we can see two graphs. The top is the general government deficit. Initially, the government forecast 1% of deficit. Then, in the government convergence program of 2020, they mentioned 3.8% of deficit, and this year's convergence program registered 8.1% of general government. So from supporting in not so generous way, the government technically totally reorganized the government or the general budget. And then we see a trajectory of decreasing general government deficit. And on bottom, we can see economic growth. It's a year-on-year version, but quarterly. The source is the Hungarian National Bank, and it represents that the COVID crisis impacted the economy and created a larger downturn compared to the global financial crisis of 2008 and 2009, but a very sharp and steady rebalancing and recovery continued this and probably will continue. Tackling the crisis in this year, on the left, we can see a new program initiated by the government, the so-called Economy Restarting Action Plan. The sum of this plan is 2.6 trillion Hungarian forints, and from the convergence program, we can see the measures, for example, infrastructure development, wage increase for health professionals, unique case, again, Hungarian village program, and so on. For example, a capital increase of the Hungarian nuclear power plant building by Russian companies. And on the right, we can see the measures carried out by the Hungarian National Bank, which was a very active player in the provision of liquidity, totally top 9 trillion Hungarian forints. The largest part of those measures were under the Funding for Growth scheme. This is for micro and SMEs. The second one was government securities purchase programs. So technically, the Hungarian National Bank bought Hungarian bonds. The third one is the long-term covered bonds program, and again, a unique case, bond funding for growth scheme. This program was for large companies, including large foreign companies, and under this program, the Hungarian National Bank bought corporate bonds. And finally, the bittersweet relationship between the EU and Hungary, as Professor mentioned, a constant blaming game. The EU missed to provide adequate financial resources to tackle the COVID-19 crisis. When the first large package was created by EU decision makers, that was the 540 billion package, including the SURE, ESM, and the European Investment Bank. Our finance minister said that attention should be paid to supporting non-euro area countries due to the fact that ESM is for euro member states. As Professor Intai mentioned, inappropriate joint vaccination policy, as the Hungarian government communicated that. I just want to add one thing, that the procurements regarding Chinese and Russian vaccines, yeah, it was a deal and a business for loyal entrepreneurs. And on the other hand, to speed up vaccination and jumpstart the economy. And finally, the case for the recovery fund. Hungary, between Hungary and the European Union, European Commission, still there's no deal related to the use of recovery fund. Instead of that, the Hungarian agency started actions issuing different kind of bonds, US denominated bonds and euro denominated bonds. We can see that for US more than $4 billion, sorry, and 1 billion in euros last day. And the actual situation, I'm not an expert in viruses or virology, but I can see that the fourth wave is now still higher than the first wave was in terms of daily new cases of the novel coronavirus crisis. We can see the second and the third wave. The second exceeded 5,000, third exceeded 10,000 daily cases. And on the right, we can see that from the European champion, Hungary is now below average country, taking into consideration the cumulative uptake of at least one dose among adults. So thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Norbert. And last, our Hungarian invited guests will come also with some PowerPoint presentations. So András Bíró, please, the word is yours.
Yes, thank you very much for the invitation, first to Andrea and her team, and also to TEPSA. And although my research that I will present to you has nothing to do with the book, so it's an outlier in this case, but it relates to the topic of the book in the sense that it presents a different aspect of solidarity, because solidarity cannot be investigated within the framework of financial relationship or the political conflicts that were described by Professor Inotai in great detail, but also in terms of whether the member states respect the common rules, respect the common laws, or the recommendations that come from Brussels. And this is what I investigated, actually. The title of this presentation shows that I investigated the relationship between the EU and Hungary at the public policy level. But as you will see, I have several data about the Visegrad countries. So many data are in V4 comparisons. We have data from Poland, Czech Republic, and Slovakia as well. But first of all, I would like to emphasize that the research that I did belongs to the stream of researches of Europeanization researches, and it means that this kind of research is explore the impact of the European Union on national politics. And these studies can concentrate on many different things, can concentrate on the impact of the EU on political systems and institutions. They can concentrate on the public policy decisions of member states at the national level, and also on the soft context of politics, which means that the EU also has very serious impact on the norms, values, perceptions, and narratives that change as a result of the fact that we are members of the European Union and we have a continuous interaction with EU politics. This research belongs to the category of the public policy researches. I created 3 new databases, and very briefly in the coming 15 minutes, this is what I will present to you, the results of this. First, we have now a database about all the laws of the Hungarian parliament since the accession of Hungary to the European Union, meaning that we have now a database from 2004 until the last parliamentary elections in Hungary, until 2018. And we investigated all these more than 2,500 laws in terms of the content, whether they are related to the EU membership, whether they have some kind of EU origin, whether they originate from EU directives or EU level recommendations, and so on. So we investigated whether these Hungarian laws are Europeanized or not. The second aspect is the implementation of the European Commission's country-specific recommendations in Hungary, and we also collected all the data from the implementation of the CSRs from all other member states, from the European Commission's country reports, actually. So this is the resource of the data. And the third database that we created is about the infringement procedures launched by the European Commission. And now we have a database of all the infringement procedures of all member states from 2004 until the last Hungarian elections, until 2018. And this is how we can see to what extent the Visegrad countries implement the recommendations that they receive from the European level. And also we can see in what areas and to what extent do Visegrad states have political clashes at the public policy level, so not at the rhetorical level, but at the public policy level. And these are reflected in the infringement procedures. Let's have a first look at the data of the legislation with EU origins at the Hungarian parliament. And the reason why we actually investigated different parliamentary terms in the Hungarian context is important because the period between 2004 and 2018 provides us a very good opportunity for the comparison of a pro-European socialist liberal government and a Eurosceptic government, which is the Orbán government since 2010. And what we see that at the general level, at the level of the aggregate numbers, there is no big difference between the different governments when it comes to the legislation with EU origins. Of course, we are talking here about big aggregate numbers and not the content of single legislation. But what we can see here is that the Europeanization of lawmaking in the Hungarian parliament didn't stop after 2010. And it's also important that that we investigate, and here I show you the laws where the Hungarian government showed proactivity. So we actually distinguished between passive Europeanization, which means that it's legislation that was compulsory to implement at the Hungarian level. And the active Europeanization means that the governments proactively implemented something that was not compulsory in the Hungarian context. And what we found, and the mixed level, the mixed laws are those which have both active and passive Europeanization elements. So it has some element that was obligatory to do, and it was complemented with some kind of element that was clearly inspired by the EU context or EU strategies or EU recommendations, and which was done because of the proactivity of the Hungarian side. And what we see here is that somewhat surprisingly, even under the Orbán government, they didn't only implement stuff that was absolutely obligatory, but they also implemented some recommendations or strategies underneath the surface. And this is why I argue in this publication and this research that we have to distinguish between the rhetorical fights and between the everyday activities of the cooperation between the two sides, because the issues that were described very much in detail by Professor Inotai, and I completely agreed with the assessment there, were the very visible political conflicts. But of course, we have hundreds of directives and we have thousands of laws within the framework of a decade, let's say. And of course, we have to see what happens in cases which are not, for example, the migration quota system, or which are not the independence of the judiciary or the CEU law or the civil society law and so on. Because we have hundreds of other laws in which the European Union clearly has impact on Hungary. And what seems to be the situation, according to this research, that even during the Eurosceptic Orbán government, this ordinary public policy cooperation is much smoother than what we would guess based on the rhetorical fights and the political conflicts between the two sides. Let's jump to a V4 comparison of the implementation of the European Commission's country-specific recommendations. What we can see here is the situation until the last parliamentary elections in Hungary, until 2018. We had the country report of 2018 in place, which evaluated the implementation until 2017. So we basically investigated in this research a 5-year-long period. And what we found is that the Hungarian government's implementation of country-specific recommendations was quite stable, but stable at a low level. So this is a scale of 0 to 100. 0 means they didn't implement anything from the recommendations. 100% would have meant that all recommendations were fully implemented at the national level. And based on the evaluation of the European Commission, which is a 5-grade scale, we made a new scale of 0, 100 and put all these countries on a 5-year-long period on this map. And what we found actually is that the real problematic case at the public policy level is much more Poland than Hungary. So it might seem that Hungary is, or a Hungarian government, the Orbán government, is even bigger troublemaker than the Polish government. It seems at the political debates. And it's true that at the political level, probably the influence of Viktor Orbán is much bigger than the leaders of the law and justice government in Poland. But the European Union has a much worse or bigger task when it comes to having an influence on domestic public policy in Poland. And this was remarkably the case when you look at the data, and especially the yellow numbers, because it shows the decrease in Poland from 2015, when the law and justice government came into place. And the fact that the average result of Poland was around 15 on a 100 scale, it meant that it didn't even reach the limited progress in most areas when it comes to the implementation of public policy. So the law and justice government, during those 3 years that we investigated, performed much worse, even worse than the Orbán government. And I have to tell you that the Orbán government, it was also in the second half when it comes to the implementation of CSR's country-specific recommendations. And at the same time, Czech Republic had a completely different trend. In 2013, Czech Republic was the worst performer in the V4 region. It was the period of an expert government, if I remember well, during that time in Czech Republic. And then in the consecutive 5 years, the performance of Czech Republic in implementing recommendations coming from Brussels improved each year, as you can see on the data, while at the same time Slovakia and Hungary was relatively stable, around 30 points. What is probably even more interesting is what happens when we don't evaluate the implementation of country-specific recommendations on a yearly basis, in 1 year term. But what happens if we have a multi-annual perspective, a long-term perspective of the implementation? And here again, we collected all the data from the European Commission's country reports, from each country report, about the long-term implementation of those measures that were at least implemented at the level of some progress, which is the medium level implementation according to the terminology of the European Commission. And what we see is that even in the more Eurosceptic member states, or I would say in those member states, because in Hungary this is the correct formulation, in those member states where the government is Eurosceptic, because here in Hungary the public is not Eurosceptic at all. What we see here in Hungary, that for example, under the Orbán government in a 5-year period, 2/3 of the recommendations that come from Brussels are implemented at least at the level of some progress, which is a much better implementation than what we see in Poland again, which is at the back of the table. You can see them at the level of 44%, much worse performance than what we see from the Orbán government. So this shows again to me that at the level of policy influence from Brussels, in Poland we can see much less policy influence on domestic public policy making than in the case of the other very problematic country, Hungary. And Czech Republic has actually the best numbers. It's around the European average. So it's 70% of the CSRs that go to the Czech Republic are implemented at least at the medium level in a multi-annual perspective. And lastly, I would say a few words about infringement procedures, because you would guess that if Polish government or the Hungarian government are the most problematic at the political level, then probably we would have the most clashes as well with Brussels in terms of infringement procedures. But this is not the case. What we see in a 15-year-long period is that there is much greater north-south divide than a west-east divide. The front runners in terms of the numbers of infringement procedures in a 15-year-long period are Italy, Greece, Portugal, Cyprus, and Spain. The 5 out of the 6 front runners are from the south, and only Czech Republic makes it to the top 5. They are at the 5th place. Hungary is at position 11 in a 15-year-long period. And we also, of course, compared what happens with the socialist governments and the difference between the Orbán governments, and I will go there shortly. But before that, I would like to show to you is that we also investigated at which phase the infringement procedures are closed. It's very important because it shows very well that if, for example, a letter of formal notice arrives to a certain government, then they are willing to correct the mistake and close the infringement procedure, or they put on a fight with Brussels and go to the next level, to reasoned opinion, and then to the third level, which is going to the European Court of Justice. And actually what we see here is that in the case of Hungary, almost 80% of the cases are closed after the first level, after the member state was notified of the problem. Have a look at the Polish case. It is 4th from the back. They only closed, the Polish governments, in a 15-year-long period, only closed the infringement procedures in 60% after the first phase, which is that they received a letter of formal notice of launching an infringement procedure from the European Commission. So here again, what I see is that if we compare the member states, we see relatively similar numbers in Slovakia and Hungary, 78%, 79%. Czech Republic is also close, 74%, and Poland is the outlier in the V4, because it's only 60% that they close the cases after the first stage. And Poland is actually the country from the region where the cases go mostly to the European Court of Justice. It's 15% of all the infringement procedures that end up at the European Court of Justice, while it's only 4% in the Hungarian cases. So here in Hungary, it's true that very important, politically important and symbolic issues are fought by the Orbán government until the last minute when it comes to throwing out the Central European University of Hungary, when it comes to punishing and attacking the civil society, when it comes to the media law, when it comes to, for example, the retirement age of the judges, so the independence of the judiciary and so on, then the Hungarian government goes until the last moment. But in general, what we can see is that in less important cases, the cooperation is much smoother than, for example, in Poland. And here, what I would like, this is the last slide that I would like to show to you, is the proportion of infringement proceedings reaching different stages in Hungary only. So here I only show you the difference between the socialist liberal governments and the two Orbán governments until 2018, from 2010 to 2018. And what we see is that almost identical is the share of those those cases that were closed after the letter of formal notice. So, for example, the Gyurcsány government, which was a pro-European government, closed 78% of the cases after the first stage. The Orbán government did basically the same after 2010, and the only small difference is that after 2014, when the situation politically became even worse between the two sides, instead of 4%, 6% of the cases ended up at the European Court of Justice. But as you can see, this is still much below the level of what we saw in Poland over a long period. So here, what I would like to emphasize regarding the infringement procedures in Hungary is that the main shift we found was in the subject matter addressed in the procedures. While in the case of the socialist governments, most procedures concern the economy. And when it came to the right-wing Fidesz cabinets, these cases involved policy areas of justice and fundamental rights, and they were mostly in relationship with the decline, with the democratic decline, with the democratic backsliding of the country. And this is what created a lot of political problems also at the political level. So I would like to conclude by saying that on the whole, we can say that the Europeanization of the Hungarian legislative output was not interrupted by the change of government in 2010, nor did we find a major increase in the number of infringement procedures launched against Hungary, or the willingness to cooperate in most of the proceedings. But I would like to underline again the different qualities of the laws that were involved in infringement procedures before 2010 and after 2010. And in general, what I would like to underline is that the Visegrad countries in general implement the EU's policy recommendations at a lower level normally than the EU average, and they have mostly higher than average clashes with the European Union when it comes to infringement procedures, but they are not the front runners. And taking all this together, I would still argue that the policy level cooperation at the everyday workings in the relationship between the European Union and the Visegrad countries is much smoother than what the high level political conflicts and debates would suggest. I would like to say a thank you to all the scholarships that I received to do this research, which was the Bolyai Scholarship and also the National Excellence Program of Hungary. And I would like to thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, András. This was a very interesting research. I have hopes that you continue it after 2018, because already 3 years have passed, and I'm very curious what will be the results of these 3 years. And now, if you have any kind of questions and comments, please raise your hand or write it in the chat, or just unmute yourself and you can ask directly. In the meantime, I would like to have some comments or questions to the Czech presenter, to Zdeněk Sigra, because it was very interesting for me what you said, that in the perception of the Czech people, solidarity is a left-wing word, and that's why it's not really sympathetic for them, or that they don't really like it. And another thing, which is a question, that regarding that Czech people are usually Eurosceptic. In the Eurobarometer surveys, we can always find that Czechs are less pro-European than the other Central European countries. And you mentioned that in October you will have elections. So do you think, or do you have any experience that the EU will be, or has been, or is a topic of elections, of electoral campaign of the government, or it's not an issue?
I expected a little bit this question, because it's logical to ask for if the European Union or the European integration is a relevant issue in the election campaign, and frankly speaking, it is not. I don't see any relevant issue connected with the European Union or European integration politics, which is more visible in the campaign, and I would say is probably less visible when I compare this election campaign and the election campaign 4 years ago, because before the last elections, there was a discussion about some European issues, like the what should be a direction of the European integration in face of the consequences of Brexit and many changes in European society, in the European Union. It was also a question if we should adopt the euro to join the Eurozone, and the issue of migration crisis was also quite live. So in this comparison, the European Union is not is mostly absent from the debates before this parliamentary election campaign, and the question is why? What's the reason? And maybe the reason is that many people in the Czech Republic don't care about the politics in the European Union. Maybe it's a consequence of COVID period, and that the European Union has been kind of outlined from the politics of member state, and I see some discussions during the campaign about the old issues which are relevant for the Czech Republic, like how to share the new finances from the EU Next Generation Fund and how to use this unique opportunity to change the Czech economy and to make progress in many things. But it is really a little bit hidden between the more relevant issues like the problem of how to start a Czech economy after the COVID pandemics, how to solve the poverty in some social groups in the Czech Republic, how to reach the better results in other political issues, and how to win the election, because the main problem of this campaign, or the most important challenge in many political parties, is how to defeat ANO movement of Czech Prime Minister Andrej Babiš, and this is an important issue. How to present this main goal to the Czech people, and how to make the election campaign more effective. So back to your question, there are not many European Union politics issue in the parliamentary campaign in the Czech Republic, and we don't also see any billboards such the one you presented, and you have in Hungary. This is it is still unimaginable in the Czech Republic, because the European politics is, of course, matter of the criticism in the broader political discourse. But the Czech European policy, in fact, is very pragmatic. So, as your colleague mentioned in his contribution about Europeanization, we are really quite consent when the Czech Republic should solve some problems or should agree with any important topics in the European Union. So I hope I answered your question.
Yes, thank you. And anyway, do you have any opinion polls, what they suggest to be the outcome of the election? So the popularity of ANO has decreased or something like that, or?
Nowadays, the new or the most recent opinion polls say that the ANO movement of the Prime Minister Babiš should be a clear winner with about 30%, and on the second and third level, about 20% are two opposite coalition. One is the Pirate Party with the Mayors and Independent movement, and the second opposite coalition is right-wing coalition of ODS, Civic Democratic Party, and Christian Democrats, and Top 09, which was founded by the former Czech Foreign Minister Karel Schwarzenberg. So the main question is if these two opposing coalition would have enough votes for creating a new government and to defeat Andrej Babiš in this election. But many people are not decided yet. So the other problem or issue which is in the air is the result of the small political parties, like the minority partner of Andrej Babiš in the Czech government, Social Democrat. They are on the edge of the 5% clause, which is the limit for entry to the Czech parliament, and also other small parties like some more national right-wing parties. So it is also a quite important aspect of the election. How big will be the win of the main parties or main coalition, like ANO movement and two opposing coalitions.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you very much. I can see one hand raised. Clara Forti, please put your question.
Thank you, Andrea. I hope you can hear me and see me.
Yeah.
Yes, I just wanted to add something what András mentioned, András Inotai, about the internal solidarity. I find his concept of the relationship and the association between external and internal solidarity very interesting. And he touched on the question also, of course, he had to, if he raised that issue of internal solidarity. And for that, I just want to show you some data, which my organization, Eurofound, we did some research on unemployment measures during the COVID-19. And I think actually that, let me share this slide with you. This not slide, it's a kind of something from the, I don't know whether you can see it now.
Not yet, but
not yet. Okay.
Try
to, okay, because I tried to okay. Share screen. So now, yes, I think now, hopefully, you will see that. Can you see it now?
Yes, yes.
So actually, this is the take-up of short-time working and temporary and unemployment benefits. Of course, April, that is the first phase. And Norbert Szijjártó rightly said that in the first phase, Hungarian government showed at least limited financial solidarity or financial, I think that was the phrase you used, Norbert. So I think that actually that really shows, so it reflects this graph, I think reflects quite well, both for what András Inotai said, so actually confirms what András said about the lack or the very limited internal solidarity, and also what Norbert said about the first phase. But I'm afraid that actually that publication came out in the March of this year. To be honest, as far as I know, it has not really changed much. I think it is, we can see that even if our Czech presenter said that actually solidarity is perceived in Czechia as some kind of left-wing phrase or expression inherited from the communist times, we can see that there is much more solidarity in reality in the Czech Republic, because there was a higher share of those who took up a short-time working scheme or temporary unemployment benefits. And there is here again I hope I can go down in this, maybe not, if I'm sharing. No, I can. Very good. So This is the share of workers supported by employment protection measures in selected sector. And this is kind of the second, we can say, second phase of the COVID crisis. And again, unfortunately, I don't know whether you can see that. You may not, because I just, yes. Again, Hungary, you can see the very small share of workers. Unfortunately, the Czech Republic is not here, but still you can see that internal solidarity is an issue at least as much as external solidarity. So thank you. This is just a comment, not question, but I really think that this was quite a relevant addition for the debate. Thank you very much, Andrea.
Yes, Clara, it was a very nice illustration of also what Norbert figures shown, that from the economic protection plan, several items went to strange issues like the Budapest-Belgrade railway and things like that, and not to those who became unemployed or had real difficulties. So thank you very much for showing this Eurofund research. Does anybody else have any questions or comments? Or if the presenters want to react to something, then they can do it now without muting.
I would like to mention that yesterday I showed the document. By the way, the date was for 2020 April, and if I know well, the government twice prolonged this action or this kind of Kurzarbeit employment measures. But I totally agree with this. Yeah, limited in this situation was an euphemism. It very limited or lack. So thank you.
Thank you. András Inotai, unmute yourself. Please unmute the microphone. Okay.
Okay. Thanks very much for the very interesting contributions. I would like to make a short comment to Clara Foti, and then to the coming back a bit to the recovery fund and the financing, the external financing, EU-related external financing of Hungary. Both tables, graphs, have very clearly demonstrated the very low level of the Hungarian government's contribution to in the first phase, at least, of the COVID crisis. But I am not only interested in the overall amount of money. I am interested in who has been practically supported. Were they directly the employees, or were these just some employers who kept on dismiss? I have a number of cases, kept on dismiss employees and practically had a huge profit from this COVID denominated money. It is also more than surprising that during a period of big crisis, some companies who did not exist at all in the past suddenly get an annual turnover of several billions with a 70% profit rate. It's how is it possible? If they are extremely innovative and find out something that would, how to say, change the world in 24 hours, I could understand it, but it is not the case. The other remark to Clara Foti is that the management, the successful management of such a crisis is much more than just an issue of money. It is much more an issue of communication, of solidarity, of internal cohesion, and not internal division. We cannot expressed in money terms, in financial terms, what is the importance of keeping the society together, or if the society was not was divided, how to reduce the gap within the society instead of increasing even more and more the cleavage. Concerning the financial issue, in my view, it is, I will try to formulate very carefully. In my view, there is a high likelihood that the amount of for Hungary from the recovery fund of this 7.2 billion euro will not be paid before this year. This means that was the reason why the Hungarian government, as Norbert very clearly showed it, had to raise two big loans. One, the biggest one in the history of Hungary, and the second is immediately the next day in euro. It is necessary to cover the budget deficit. The budget deficit otherwise of 8% has included the EU recovery fund. If the EU recovery fund is not coming, be sure the deficit will be double digit. And a deficit cannot be financed out of the budget, normal budgetary means. Therefore, if you look at the remarks, why and to what in which composition the Hungarian government took emitted bonds and how they will be used, there is a lot of money for normal budgetary financing of pensions, of and healthcare, of education, which should be in normal cases a normal issue within the budget. So, in my reading, the bond issue tries to at least partly fill the gap, the huge financial gap which exists at the moment, and the government took notice of it now. And one more remark to it. It is particularly important, this issue at a time where the normal, the amount available for Hungary within the multi-annual financial framework, 2014-2020, is practically running out, because all the projects which have been approved and have been implemented and have been financed until at the end of 2020, they had to be closed down financially until the mid of 2022. So there will not be such a huge amount of money coming in the next period. The other is that, of course, Hungary is entitled to get a lot of money also from the next, new multi-annual financial framework 2021-2027. But we know that in the first years, the new projects have to be prepared, they have to be approved, and the Hungarian side has to pre-finance, the EU will then pre-finance about 10%, but in the first years, 2021-2023, a very small amount of additional resources will enter the country. It is absolutely normal. It is okay, Hungary has and is entitled to get 18 billion euro just from the structural fund, but it is not divided into similar annual averages. A large part of this money will come in the second part. And the question is, how can we survive financially this period if the recovery fund is not there, and if the normal EU funds are also, if not disappearing, but become much more modest than usual. It is very interesting, it is my last remark, that this money could have been raised without any linkage to the rule of law issue from the 9 billion euro credit line which the recovery fund offered to each country. Please, the European Central Bank, with mutualization of the debt, we will raise the credits at very good terms and in very good conditions. Why the Hungarian government did not opt for this option, for this opportunity? The official argument was from the very beginning, we do not need any credit. We need the money what we are entitled to good. It is our money. It turns out it's not our money. You have to do something for it. That is the grant. But the credits, we would not like to take credit because, and I quote, we would like to avoid debtor slavery. If we take money, I am sure that the money, even if the conditions are relatively good, the money taken yesterday and 2 days ago, I would like to have a comparison, which would have been the conditions if we had taken the money through the European Central Bank. And if one talks about debtor slavery, what about the indebtedness of Hungary to the nuclear project with Russia? What is the indebtedness and with the Chinese projects? We do not know the conditions, but I am absolutely sure that both the financial conditions and the additional, sometimes not less important, non-financial conditions are much harsher. I would like to have this data, and then we could make a comparison whether the steps taken, the emergency steps taken yesterday and 2 days ago were really the right direction, and whether they would minimize the so-called debtor slavery, or they would definitely highly increase Hungary's financial, I quote, financial slavery, which the next generation will have to pay for. I don't know whether the Hungarian society is interested in such medium and longer term considerations, but it would be more than necessary to make the society aware of such traps, which are much more important than, for instance, I wouldn't like to minimize some of the important issues which during the pre-election campaign I discussed in Hungary and in various social circles. They are important as well, but I think the horizon is it has a completely new quality, and we have to understand it because we are at a historical threshold in the Hungarian history. Within or outside, or with or without the European Union. Thank you.
Thank you very much, András. I can see Norbert wants to add something.
Yes, by the way, this was very good. And so just shortly, generally, the government from the budget in advance allocates money to the economy, to entrepreneurs and so on, and later the EU transfers the money in tranches to the government. And secondly, Varga, Minister of Finance, mentioned that the euro-denominated bond issue is to cover the deficit, and the dollar-denominated is to in advance start spending the money of what can become from the recovery fund, and later they believe that later when there will be a deal between the EU and Hungary, they will put the money back. So that's their thinking.
Okay. Yes.
Well, it's a long discussion. Just a remark. Yes, it is justified that the money probably will come a bit later, how much money will become is, of course, not a different question, namely, the recovery fund is connected to special EU priorities. And if the projects which are pre-financed by the budget in the expectation of get the EU money later, we do not know whether they will be accepted by the European Union as projects which fit into the priority list of the European Union. If they don't, they will not be financed, even though the money were there. So.
Okay. All right. So I can't see any more questions or comments or raised hands. So I would like to thank all the participants, all the presenters, and also to the audience to be here. And I suggest you to watch our homepage and the homepage of TEPSA, and then you will be informed when this new book will be published at the Springer publisher. So thank you very much for being here and have a nice day further on. Bye-bye.